You guys, welcome back. Quick video here, a review of the Injora Swamp Claw 1.9-inch tires. And I'll just give you kind of a once-over of the rig I'm running them on and some sizing specifications and so on. And then we'll get right to the running video and I'll show you guys how they did. As you can see, I already went out and ran it, got it nice and muddy and dirty. It was wet, it was slippery, a lot of different conditions, and they did great. So I wanted to do a quick review on these. If you're considering getting these tires, I recommend them, especially if you're going to be running them in like a mixed use terrain, like rocks, roots, dirt, sand, mud. They really work well as an all-around, all-purpose tire. For pure rock crawling, I think it's really going to be dependent on the type of rock you're running on. They do very well in rock, but there are better tires if that's all you're going to be running on. I think where these really shine is like a mixed terrain use, like what you'll see today in the running video, where you're transitioning from like mud through water, maybe a little creek crossing, kind of round, like bouldery style rocks, maybe with some moss and a bit slippery. Just for an all-purpose tire, they do really well. So I am running these with the Injora Silicone inserts, and because this rig is very heavy, this thing weighs 11 pounds, 9 ounces. There's a ton of brass on this thing. Because of that, I am running the blue inserts, and they did very well. I actually did run these on the green, and they did okay, but they were definitely really like flattening out quite a bit. So I think blue is kind of the sweet spot for this. You can also tune them. Let me grab these real quick. I'll show you. Well, let me get you guys in here and I'll show you what I'm talking about in terms of tuning the inserts. You may have already seen this, but it's a couple ways you can go about it. And depending on how much your rig weighs, you might want to do that, but you have options when it comes to this. So let me show you guys what I got going on here, and then we'll get to the running video. Okay, so these are the Swamp Claws. These are an S3 compound, so not all out grippiest compound, but they work. They do work really well. I don't have any real complaints about these. They seem to hook up in just about everything. They seem to even do better when they're wet. For whatever reason, I ran these, and it was maybe a little kind of humid, and the rocks were a little damp. And on purely on rock, they didn't do quite as well as I would have hoped. But then also they were brand new. And I think this is the type of tire that it's going to get better on rock as these get scrubbed in and they get a little bit of a feathered edge. Just when you have knobs this big and it has a very sharp brand new edge on it, as the knobs kind of fold back a little bit, all you have is just that very sharp edge gripping the rock. So you don't get a ton of rubber on the ground in that situation. But as they kind of feather in a bit and you start getting a little bit of wear, they actually start gripping better. So these are working better and better as I use them. First run I did purely in rock. They were brand new. And I was like, they're not the greatest. I may have that video coming up soon in the future. I was testing these versus the fake tusks, but and these didn't do as well in the rock. But in today's conditions, you'll see in the running video, they did really well. It was super slippery out. It was even kind of raining a little bit while I was filming, very damp. It rained overnight, and I was running next to a stream, and all of those rocks very routinely get washed out, and there's usually water running over, so that they get very smooth and kind of almost polished, and they're very slick and kind of mossy in spots, and these things did great. So this is, like I said, 11 pound 9 ounce on the blue insert, and I feel like the amount of squish is just about right. If they do break in any more, there is a little bit of a break-in period with the silicone inserts. If they do break in any more, I may go ahead and just add some little foam here. This is foam backer rod, like 3/8 backer rod for caulking. You can put this in a gap and then you caulk over it so you don't waste as much caulking. But essentially what you would do with the inserts is just take this and you can stuff it in any of the holes that you want, like do every other one or do all of the internal ones. If you want to make it a much firmer, like inner stage, you can go around the outside here with a couple of these, and it really does firm it up quite a bit. So you can just trim those to length and put those in. There's other ways. I've seen guys use like Nerf darts and stuff, basically any kind of foam. And then it's up to you. If it's important to keep this waterproof, you want to use a foam that's not going to really absorb the water and then just disintegrate after a while. So these are not the Injoras. These are like another brand, but I was just testing these out too. The Injora version fits in the Swamp Claws perfectly. They're the right width. They're the right height. These tires measure a true 4.75. They're about like 119, 120 millimeter. and about 44 millimeters wide. So the Injora silicone insert fits these things perfectly. So happy with that. And then just go based off of weight. I would say if your truck is like 7 pounds or lighter, I would lean toward the green. And then if you think they're a little soft, you can always tune them a little bit. If you're like pushing 8 pounds, you could even trim some of these out if you want to do a little bit less firm. But so you can really play around with these. But I like them. The one thing I will say about these versus a dual stage foam or even a single stage foam, these can get a little bouncy, and you'll even see in the video at times where you start getting some tire hop, and it's like slip and grip, and especially with big knobs like this, you start getting a decent amount of bouncing, and these things are pretty bouncy. They bounce way more than a foam, so it just really exaggerates that tire hop on these, and I've definitely noticed that compared to like a dual stage foam insert, that these tend to hop more. But overall, you do get a ton of side support, lateral support with these, so I like them. They also add a lot of weight. If you're looking for a cheap way to add weight to the bottom of your rig, that's a good way to do it. But they're not perfect. They do get bouncy. That's my one complaint. But overall, very happy with this. Yeah, so that's it, guys. So check out this running video. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, stay tuned. By the way, because I know someone's going to ask me, these are Trail wheels. Nothing fancy. You can get them on Amazon. I think they were like $50 for a set of 4. They are very nice because they go together pretty easily. I think there's just 8 screws on the back. You don't have to mess around with all these little B-lock screws and stuff. I did install some little scale hardware. It just comes with your standard like cap head hex hardware, which is fine, but I think this gives it a little bit better of an appearance. This is the kind of terrain I think the swamp claws kind of were made for. When you're transitioning from dirt, maybe into some roots, some mud, some rocks, a little bit of water, kind of a little bit of everything. These tires do a really good job of that. And you can see I'm getting a decent amount of squish here, but these inserts are brand new, and these tires only have a little bit of runtime on them up to this point. So they're not really fully broken in yet either. This truck weighs 11 pounds 9 ounces as you see it with the battery. I'm running a fairly large, I think it's about a 4700 milliamp hour 3S battery. This truck has a ton of brass on it. I'm not the original owner. I took this in as a trade, and one of the previous owners, I don't think I'm the second owner, I think I'm like the third owner, but one of the previous owners, whoever initially built this rig up, just went crazy with the Samix brass. I mean, it has pretty much, I think, almost everything that Samix makes in terms of brass for a TRX4. And if you guys are familiar with it, that stuff is very pricey. This thing probably has like $400 worth of brass parts on it. The front axle alone weighs 1.5 pounds. It's pretty crazy, but you can really see how planted this truck is, especially for having this body on it. This body is kind of big and heavy in terms of Lexan bodies, but it does really well, especially that roof rack on the top adds quite a bit of weight. But I do think it looks pretty cool. This body has grown on me. I didn't have any intention on keeping this Mercedes body on here. I think it's a bit bougie. And that's why I was like, do Swamp Claws make this look less bougie? I don't know. Like, I'm trying to make it look more like a trail truck. My first intention was to get this and throw a hard body on it. And I may still turn this into something else, but this truck has grown on me, mostly because of the light kit on here. I am a sucker for lights on an RC, and I think Traxxas does such a good job with their light kits. The lenses look really good. The coloration, the intensity of all these LEDs just looks great. How everything is integrated and how neat the wiring is really nice. The rock lights on here look great. So I don't know, I may just stick with this body for the winter. I'll take this thing out and run it in some kind of nasty conditions. I don't always want to take all my rigs out and run them through dirt and mud and water and get them all kind of beat up and stuff. So this might just be kind of my bad conditions truck, and especially with these tires on here, I think it kind of makes sense. But the look of it is growing on me. Let me know what you guys think. Do you like the G-Wagon look for an off-road truck? I live here in northern New Jersey, and I see G-Wagons quite a bit, and they're just kind of mall crawlers. Like, I wouldn't turn one down. They're crazy expensive, and I think they are a cool truck, but you know, for something that's more of like, you know, an off-road trail truck. I don't know. I'm still like on the fence. I do want to black out these fender flares. I think that'll help give it a little more of an off-roadish kind of look. I kind of like the fact that it's almost looking like a little bit of an upscale, like Jeep Cherokee, like old school XJ Cherokee that's a little bit squared off. So I don't know, man. I go back and forth with this. I like it. I don't like it. I'm not sure. I did go ahead and add these tube steel rock sliders on here. I think that kind of added to the look. I kind of like how it matches the roof rack. Added this little tube steel rear bumper. I have a front like bull bar coming for it. So I think it's getting there. I need to hook up the winch. This does have a winch in it. I'm working on it. I don't know yet. I like it. I don't know that I love it. But worst case, I can turn this into something else really great. I can throw on, you know, any of the number of hard bodies that are out there. I also have an idea for making a really cool Dakar rally style truck out of this platform. So we'll see what happens. But for now, I think it's just going to stay like this because I have plenty of other projects to work on. But yeah, so this truck, very heavy, 11 pounds, 9 ounces, very well planted. I think these inserts worked out pretty well. These are, like I mentioned earlier, the blue Injoras. I don't have any additional foam or anything in them, and they are still in a little bit of a break-in period. I think you need to run them for an hour or two for them to really soften up a bit, but I was really happy with kind of the stiffness of them and the support that they offered in this. And of course, I always love the fact that they're waterproof because I love running in areas like this. I just can't stay out of the water. I'm like a little kid. When I see a stream like this, I just have to drive the truck through it. I know it's not the best thing for them, but I just went over this whole rig. It was pretty worn out when I got it. So I pulled everything apart, re-greased everything, put in a new spur gear, a new pinion, a new slipper assembly. I got a whole bearing kit for both axles, which was actually a good deal. I think it was like 16 bucks off Amazon for a pretty nice kit. Included all of the bearings. I pulled all the axles apart, re-greased everything, replaced the bearings, and huge difference. It's amazing how much quieter and tighter everything feels, and it just runs very smooth. This is running a Hobbywing Fusion Pro 1800 kV, has a Reefs 555 servo in it, and overall this truck does really well. It did come with a lift kit. When I first got it, it was really goofy. It had a lift kit with huge 2.2 Hyrax tires. It just looked insane, like a monster truck. So I went back down to these 1.9 Swamp Claws, and I put some high clearance links on because the lift kit does use longer links that didn't really have the wheelbase sitting right. So I picked up just an Amazon like RC Lines high clearance link kit for this truck. I am still running the long travel shocks that are like 112 millimeter, but I added an internal spring just to kind of pull them down a little bit. So it does limit the axle droop a tiny bit, like 5 mil, but I feel like it sits about right for something that I want to use in conditions like this. For a trail truck, you get a good amount of clearance, a lot of flex, and I wouldn't mind if it sat a little bit lower, so I may play around with some springs at some point. But I think part of the reason it looks like it's sitting high is because the rock lights are on, and it really kind of shows the inner wheel well and the shock and everything. It just makes it more noticeable. So I think it looks like it's sitting higher than it really is. But overall performance, I mean, you could see these tires, like, look how good. It actually winds up this root right here, and I had to back up because it's just gripping these roots so well. There were a lot of times on this run where I was just like, there's no way, like, there's no way it's gonna make it up this, or I shouldn't even bother. But I was like, almost started getting a little lazy, and I didn't want to pick up the truck and lift it up, whatever. So I'm like, let me just try it. And it kind of surprised me quite a bit. There were just sections where I was like, oh, it just made it right up through there with no problem. And you know, that's a pretty good sign that the tires are doing their job. But yeah, with a rig this heavy and some good aggressive tires with the right inserts, it's pretty amazing what they are capable of. And the wet performance on these tires, I think, is what really impressed me the most. It seemed like they almost get better traction when it's going through like a stream where you just have nice clean rocks. Even though the rocks in this area they're very almost polished because the water is a little bit low right now. So a lot of the stuff I was crawling on, the rocky sections, are pretty well covered with running water most of the time. So they do get really smooth, and they tend to have a bit of algae growing on them. And even right now, if they're dry, that algae is still there, and it does make it slippery. So pretty impressive for any tire to get traction on these rocks in these conditions. So I mentioned this truck does have a winch. I just need to, I disconnected it for now because I need to go in and program the control on my radio. I am running my Radio Link 6-channel, I forget, it's an RC6 G, something like that. I really lucked out with this truck too, because when I got it, the guy said, "Oh yeah, it just needs a receiver, controller, whatever." And I opened up the receiver box, and there was a Radio Link 6-channel receiver already in there. So I was like, "That's awesome! That just saved me a little bit of time and money." But I do need to go in and set it up. If you look at my FJ40, my FMS FJ40 build, I installed a winch on there. My one complaint with having a winch on a truck is if you have multiple rigs, it's real easy to forget what switch you have set up to control the winch. And if you accidentally hit that switch while you're running a different rig, or while your controller is just in the back of your car, and then you plug in your battery, turn it on, by the time you realize, like, hey, what is that sound? That sounds like a servo turn or something. Something's running. By the time you hear that, it's almost too late. And if the winch is just winding away and it's bound up, you're either going to burn out the motor, or you're going to destroy something with it just pulling on that winch cable. And I've done it before. And, you know, as much as I want to say I'll remember that I have a winch, I don't always remember. So I was able to set up kind of a fail-safe way on my controller on that, where it's almost like a 2-position. You have to have one switch turned on, and then you have another switch that controls it. Or actually, I think I had it set up with a push button, so that you flip a 3-way switch either forward or backward for the direction of the winch, and then you use a little clicker switch to turn it on and off. So it worked out really well. I just need to remember how I did it. I actually have to go back and watch my own video. That's how crazy it is. So I guess I'm happy that I did that video, because now I'll remember exactly how to do it. You know, you do something once, and you're like, okay, you got to do it a few times to really set it into memory. But I need to set that up, and I need to get a nice little winch hook. I think the Traxxas winch hook is one of the nicest I've seen. They make a nice little steel winch hook, looks very scale, and I think it's only like $10. So I think I'm gonna grab one of those. That'll look cool sticking out the front here. It does have that winch bumper on the front with the fairlead built in, so that's pretty much ready to go. You know, this video is turning into as much of a review on this truck as it is on the tires, but I kind of just wanted to show you guys all of the running video so you can see for yourself how these tires work. And if you have similar terrain, you know, you're going to have similar results, most likely, especially if you have a truck that weighs this much. But I think even 8-9 pound truck is going to do really well on these tires. Some tires, you know, when you look at how thick the carcass is, or just how many lugs that it has on the sidewall, it really does change the performance of the tire, because it just makes it stiffer. So it's almost like adding a stiffer insert. And these tires themselves, even with no inserts on them, are pretty stiff feeling, just from all like how thick the lugs are, especially on the side lugs. Really adds a lot of stability to the sidewall. So that's why I'm mentioning the weight of the truck quite a bit, is because you're going to want to pay attention. I think these tires are really sensitive to the insert. If these are too stiff, I think you're just going to lose a lot of traction. So you just want to pay attention to that. If you have a lighter rig, go with the lighter, the green silicone inserts, or just experiment with like a dual stage. You know, I'm pretty happy with. If you check out Crawler Canyon, he has a YouTube channel. He does a lot of excellent tire testing, and honestly, that's one of the reasons I bought these tires, to try them, is because he gave these a really good review. He has a lot of good info on kind of DIY tire inserts, and I've had good luck with a lot of the stuff that he's recommended. There's on Amazon, if you do a search for 1.9 dual stage inserts, you'll see them pop up. They look like Pro Lines, but the company that I saw them listed under, it was called like Tim Tins. And they're really cheap. They're like $12-13 for a set of 4. They work really well, even with the stock foam. I've had good luck with them. But if you want to experiment with different outer foam, There's a lot of good options out there, and I think they work out really well. And they're a little bit less bouncy than these silicone inserts are. I mentioned that earlier. That's my one complaint with these, is that they're kind of springy. So if you get into a situation on like rock where your wheel gets that little bit of a hopping going on, they kind of really add to that hop, and they kind of bounce around quite a bit. But that would be like my one and only real complaint about them. I mean, I think for the cost, for you know, 20 bucks, you can find silicone inserts even cheaper. I found like the off-brand ones, the non-Injoras. I think I bought a set of 4 for like $8 once, and they are stiff. I'd say they're at least equivalent to the blue, maybe even the red Injoras. That's the one thing. The Injoras, at least the colors make a difference. You know, the green is soft, the blue is intermediate, the red is firm. On some of these other ones, they just make random colors and they're all the exact same stiffness. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that, but it's one of those things, you just got to buy them and try them. And if you find them cheap enough, that's fine, because you can tune them. Like I said, you can chop out little pieces or add stuff. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll catch you in the next video. Later.